सबसे request है. One final request to everyone. We are about to begin with our post-lunch technical session, requesting everyone to please take your seats as quickly as possible. Just to check on the speakers for the next session, do we have Mr. Vivek Sen around? All right. Do we have Mr. Nitin Zamre? Okay, so let us start quickly. क्योंकि सब लोग आ चुके हैं. Welcome back after the lunch break. We will now begin with our second technical session on empowering communities, the role of DRE in sustainable development. This session will delve into the transformative impact of distributed renewable energy on communities, providing clean energy while fostering local development. This session will be moderated by Mr. Vivek Sen, Associate Director, Climate Policy Initiative. Let's join our hands in welcoming Mr. Vivek Sen on the dais. And we'll be joined by Mr. Nitin Zamre, COO of the Infravision Foundation on Pradhan Mantri Suryoday Yojana. जोरदार तालियों के साथ स्वागत. इतनी जोरदार तालियां लंच के बाद. We can have a louder applause, everyone. Thank you very much. Inviting Ms. Bettina, Duran Advisor, GIZ, to please join us. Let's welcome Ms. Bettina on the stage. May I please invite Aklavya, Sharan, Director, Desi Power, to please join us. तालियों के साथ अभिनंदन. May I please request Mr. Kunal, Vaid, CEO, Resham, Sutra, to please join us. सभी के लिए जोरदार तालियां. So as we are joined by our eminent speakers with their gracious presence on the stage, may I please request the moderator to kindly begin with the deliberations of this session. Sir.
Yeah, thank you so much, and truly honored to be part of this co-hosted event. Sincere thanks to Power Foundation of India. And I am in the company of great thinkers, doers, implementers. So the spotlight should be on the people who have really done the work. I'm just a facilitator for this session. We have two presentations in this session. I think one by Resham Sutra and one by Desi Power. So I'll request Mr. Aklavya to please present what he has to. And my request is if you can keep it to 10 minutes.
Good afternoon, everybody. So I am Aklavya Sharan, representing Desi Power. So we are a company, actually technology-driven company, provide solutions through renewable energy and energy services in the villages to create jobs, which Dr. Sharan has elaborated more, so I'm not going into much detail. I just want to, this is a typical example of the work what we have been doing is a village level integration. So one side is the agriculture, electricity, which is needed for lighting and of course micro enterprises. Then energy plantation and agro residues also one of the major part, because we have also focused on bio-based solutions. And third is also cow dung, another thing using biogas as one of the technology. This is one of the example of our project which we have done at a village called Chakai in Araria district. This is totally linked with micro enterprises based solutions. So at one location we have microgrid, and when we talk about a microgrid, it is a hybrid. So biomass and solar PV and also battery bank based generation solution, and which is linked with the different types of micro enterprises, which is a pelletizing machine, then cattle feed, drinking water, irrigation water, then we have food processing unit and so. This shows how these connections we have taken from the plant. As you know, Dr. Sharan spoke about the need and usefulness of dynamic modeling tool. So we have over the years we also have learned that how a modeling tool is necessary for this village this complex village kind of projects. Our solution is basically driven out of load management. So first is the important that we create load or see that what kind of load can be served by the DRE solution. The center you can see there are different type of technological options, which is in particular project based on the geography we can select the most suitable technologies. And the third and last side you can see this is the smart system management unit, which can ultimately deliver the most possible, manage the generator and storage and lowest cost of generation and capex and opex both it can deliver. So based on this modeling, we have now developed a project which is based on biogas and solar PV as and storage, battery storage as a generation side. And right side you can see there are different type of loads. So these loads primarily based on that particular location where we are going to work. So this kind of load we have selected, which will be used in that particular project, and the generator has to meet requirement of different loads, which will be operational during the day and night. So this is how this is a scheme how we will be developing, and yeah. So I will just talk about the some numbers and the project what exactly is aim to do. So as I mentioned, that first is the important factor for us is the load. What is the demand available in the particular village, or what kind of demand we can create. So we have listed out different types of enterprises, which is exactly linked with that particular village. That what are the things can be developed, which is, where we can develop entrepreneurs in the village. So it can also help in developing, generating new jobs. And where this biogas plant which we have selected is also due to the reason that is linked with a dairy. So there is a existing dairy in the village where we are linking this biogas plant and hybridizing with solar PV and storage. And here storage we are keeping to a minimum level possible, because this generator, the biogas generator, can run during the evening, during the time when solar PV is not available, and keeping a minimum storage where we can at least meet critical loads at any time, any given time. So in this context, what we have done is a 40 kilowatt is the requirement we have identified from the micro enterprises. And we have now taken a one shift operation, 8 hours per day. So it can, that requirement of the units from these units are around 84,000 kilowatt hour annually. Then see then we have configured based on the load, when we have the load, identified load, then we have configured the system. So what we have looked at, a biogas plant based on the dairy. So what we have done, there is 100 cows. So based on this number of cows, and we are also planning to add Napier grass into it. So a system size is around 205 meter cube what we have selected. So that means we can generate around 200 units of kilowatt hour from this generator. And then when we have this number of units from the biogas plant, then the left side, then we have taken what is the PV sizes that needed to meet this number of units. So you can see in the left side the 95,364 units, these two combination can generate annually, and our requirement is 84,000 during the year. So there, so that at least it can meet at any given time. So here is a typical number which we have worked out on that particular project. Then approx 1 crore investment is needed. So when we talk about investment, so it's not only on the generation, that is the microgrids, but we are talking about major part is also coming from micro enterprises. And we have is a fact that without training and capacity building, these things will not be successful. So we have to add a component, training center, and a kind of infrastructure which is needed. So with this combination, 1 crore investment is needed. But if you look at the right side, with this investment, project is still viable. If you are able to meet these many units for these many types of enterprises. So IRR can go up to 15% based on 15 rupees per kilowatt hour of electricity sale. If you can see, actually LCOE is 17 rupees 80 paisa, but we are selling at a lesser price because we are taking advantage of the manure, which is coming out as a byproduct of biogas plant and waste heat from the gas engine for the applications which is required for the different in the dairy also, and also for the agriculture applications. So this is how the combination can deliver around 15%, 16% IRR. MEs, that is the micro enterprises. So if this investment, taking into consideration of repayment of loan and also ROE, it can come to a range of 8 to 10%, even can be higher if we can increase number of hours gradually. So this is the number which we have worked out and which believe that this type of combination, this kind of integrated project can be a sustainable project. And impacts are certainly, there are, it creates direct number of jobs, which is in the micro enterprises, in the power plant, and many number of indirect jobs where farmers are really benefited. So these are we also have our own experience working in these projects from over the years. Then CO2 savings is not only in the power plant, but also if dairy we are utilizing the cow dung, so that methane there. Then fertilizer, this manure which is from the biogas, that can save a lot of amount of carbon saving from the agri field. And we believe that if we are able to use this organic fertilizer, then soil improvement in farm produce, and ultimately aim is to increase income of the farmers. So overall, a development in a village is possible through this combination. And we have also identified, I also have been hearing, type of why DR is not scaling the way it should have been. So we also have identified the influencing factors, like what are the things needed. So finance is certainly, we know one side, for raising finance for microgrid only is possible today. People are doing it. It is, I don't think that will be a big challenge. But when we are talking about the integrated project where micro enterprises is the major part in our project, then finance for that is must. Without that, we think that, then the project success will not be, we can't achieve the success we are talking about. So that means finance needed for both the side. Then, one of the aspects which Dr. Sharan also had highlighted, that data, which site data, if it is there, then a replication plan preparation also can be easy. If we have a data, we can do that. We can, number of commercial pilots also can come up. So we also feel that site data is very important. Optimized system, so which, as I talked about, dynamic modeling tool, so that we believe it will help us to optimize the system, to be able to reduce the capex one side, and also help in the lesser, optimum LCOE. When we talk about the micro enterprises, different types of micro enterprises are there. So that means the produce from the micro enterprises have to be linked with the market linkages. So if you are able to get a proper market linkages and a good rate, then viability and profitability of micro enterprises improves.
Kunal, sorry to interject, but you will have to wind up
Just
now.
this is the last slide. And soft financing in terms of CO2, I have not factored CO2 into my calculation. CSR and patient investors, because if there is a training component and capacity building components are there, so that should be financed by soft money, not by the hard financing. And linkages with grid, which is the something which ultimately should be the aim. So regulatory framework is very much required, a policy intervention from the government, what will be needed here. So yeah, so this is where I think I'll stop. And this is, I had elaborated here. So thank you so much.
Thank you, Aklavya, for a wonderful session. May I now invite Kunal Vaid to please present his case study.
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Kunal Vaid, co-founder of Resham Sutra, and our company makes machines that bring happiness. Our vision is to build local farm-to-fabric value chains that provide a sustainable livelihood opportunity to rural women particularly, so that they can be financially independent and they can get sustainable green job within their village. So we do this through green technology, value chain interventions, and digital interventions. So far, we have worked with more than 20,000 customers across 350 villages in 16 states of India. On an average, we have been able to double the family income for most of our customers. Over 60,000 people have been impacted through our work so far, and more than 6,800 metric tons of carbon dioxide is offset with the use of solar energy in our machines. And we have also planted organic silk plantations across 200 acres. This is all in tribal areas. So many of you may not be aware that textile production in villages is the largest non-farm employer in India. We have all seen and we have heard of the sound of the textile looms working in the villages. And this is prevalent throughout the country. Each part of the country has its own specific type of weaving, type of fabrics. So these are the people, these are the industries that we are targeting. There are more than 40 million rural fabric weavers. There are more than 9 million people in India who are engaged in silk production, from farm to reeling to weaving. We are targeting women. Many of them are often doing hidden work, because in every weaving family, the women of the family, the mothers, the wives, and the daughters, they do accessory work, like they prepare the yarn, they finish the fabric for the person who's weaving it. And they hardly ever get any remuneration. They don't even get any recognition for this work. So we are trying to change the situation across the country. Many of you would be aware of the problems that people and women in the villages face when they try to start a small enterprise. Typically, they don't have any good solutions available. Traditionally, we have had situation where power was not available, and that has often become a reason why good solutions, good machines have not been developed for their use. Very often, they depend totally on the skills that they have learned from their family, from their grandparents, and no real skilling has happened across the villages so far. Working capital is another problem that all the people in the villages always face. And then there are very difficult market access, because people, especially in the textile industry, they need to be aware of the market demands. They need to be aware of the fashion and different, the way the needs or demands are changing across the cities. And there is no system where this information will come to them. So what we have started with, firstly, was small-sized solar-powered machines that act as a factory in itself. Each of these machines, which run on power from, say, 15 watts to 20 watts typically, the cost of the machine varies from about 10,000 to 30,000 rupees. And a person using these machines can earn up to 10,000 rupees per month from her home using the locally available material. And we focus substantially on reliability and profitability. I'd like to mention what Dr. Sharan was talking about earlier, that unless profitability and reliability is built into the design of the product and into the design of the business model, it is not going to work in the village situation. It is not going to work when it meets the customer. And when we talk of the productive use equipment, then profit gets broken down into productivity and the cost of solution. So these are the three areas we try to focus on, and we try to do this from the point where we conceptualize our design, where we conceptualize a machine, that it should be able to target all the parameters and be right on each of them. Typically, all of our machines are designed in a way that the payback is less than 1 year. So our product range includes machines from the entire textile value chain, starting from making the yarn. So we have small-sized spinning and reeling machines. Then we see that these machines also needed a market to be created. Because like I mentioned earlier, this was mostly going through a hidden labor, which was being consumed within the family. But then as the production increases, the production is more than what the family is able to consume. So we have to create a market that is beyond the family's needs. The other side of the machines that we work on are the weaving and sewing machines. Our weaving machines are, they cost less than 1.5 lakh rupees, including the solar power system, which is sometimes cheaper than a power-driven normal loom also without the solar power system. Right? And these machines work with less than 100 watts of power compared to more than 500 watts of power needed to run a traditional loom. And then when we talk of solar sewing machines, this can be retrofit into existing sewing machines, and it's a very good solution, especially for tailors and women who are doing the tailoring activity commercially, because their productivity increases 4 times. So in fact, for most of our machines, we are able to increase productivity by at least 100%. So when we started our work with selling the machines, pretty soon we realized that we actually need to be a partner with our customers, because our success is very intertwined with the success of our customers. And to do that, we need to solve all of their problems. We cannot just say that I am the technology provider. I have to be the raw material provider, the market provider, the finance provider for my customers, because they are in a location and in a sector where they don't have anybody else to turn to. So if I tell them that you start this business and it will be profitable for you, they will say, then you have to come and solve all the problems for me. And if I am not ready to do it, then they will not be successful. So now our business model revolves around setting up a rural experience center, which you can think of it like a car showroom, where you can go, you can do a test drive, you can get all the support that you would need. You will also learn how to drive here. And then you will also get the finance to buy the machines. So, I mean, all the problems are not solved, but then this is the dream, this is the idea with which we are working, and we are solving the problems to the extent we can all the time. I'll take you through the journey of a typical customer. So, Parvati, pictured here, is a rural woman living in Bilaspur in Chhattisgarh, in a village near Bilaspur town. And she was earlier doing farm labor, which was a periodic work she would get only during the sowing and the harvesting season, and no other work otherwise. And her family income was about 60,000 rupees annually. She got training at one of our rural experience centers. Then with other women in a village, she set up a small self-help group, and a solar-powered production site was set up in a village. Her family income doubled, more than doubled, to 122,000 rupees per annum. Now she aspires to send her daughter to college and make her a civil servant. This was something she could not even dream of a few years ago. Now we see that many young girls, many young men and women coming and joining us because they see this as a way of being in their village and doing good work there.
Kunal, but you'll have to wind up now.
I'll just do it last slide. So another very important thing that we realized very early into our journey was service requirement. So within a few months of our installing our first few machines, we started getting calls from our customers that the machines stopped working in a few months. So we all went into the market, we all went into the villages to understand the problem. And we realized that for most of our customers, These were the first technology products that they have ever encountered. And they absolutely had no idea that these machines need to be wiped, cleaned, oiled. So we decided to learn from this. We have changed the designs of our machine to make sure that they do not stop. Even if they are not cleaned for the whole year, the machine will not stop at least. It will keep giving warning. It will keep telling the customer to get it serviced. We organize quarterly service camps in all the villages where all the products are serviced free of cost, whether it is a 5 years old machine or whatever the time frame. We have trained almost 60 rural people from the village communities themselves to service the machines. These people are paid by us during the warranty period, and post-warranty, they are paid by the people who are using the machines. But this has been a win-win solution for both them and us. Yeah. Some more data about our impact, but I'll wind up here. Okay.
Thank you so much. It looks like a very promising solution for the rural textile industry. And now let me turn to our panel. I think we have already had 2 case studies that have enlightened us on what can be the solutions that can be deployed. So let me turn to Ms. Bettina and understand from her the experience GIZ has in sort of supporting DRE implementation in other countries or in India. What are the case studies that you would want to talk about?
Thank you so much. And thank you for letting me share a little bit of the world of the development cooperation, because this is quite special in comparison to the private sector. Then right from the beginnings, the projects we are working on are restricted with a limited duration and a limited budget. And furthermore, our work and our projects, we are measured by the sustainable impact we can create even beyond our projects. So this makes clear that we cannot really afford to support the implementation of technology without anchoring it in a meaningful way. And the key word here is the same as Dr. Sharan used, it is productive use. So that means that we electrify processes, and at the same time we serve a business model or even several business models if the applications are harnessed together in a microgrid or in a small grid. And mostly it is about the substitution of diesel gensets when we talk about PV applications, and because we know that PV electricity can be made available very much cheaper than electricity from diesel generators. And another factor is that PV, in comparison to other DRE energy sources like bioenergy, is in comparison easier to harness or to apply. Just to give you a little bit of the background, in 1952 the German Development Corporation started, and since today we have realized about 36,000 projects around the world, and at the moment we are focusing on 70 countries and mostly in sub-Saharan Africa. So the examples I will share with you are mainly from Africa or sub-Saharan Africa. And one beautiful example, which is beyond rooftop application, is that we made use in Tunisia and Kenya of a solar-powered ice machine. And this ice machine works without a battery and is dynamically. That means it produces ice dependent on the radiation which is available from the sunlight. And furthermore, this ice machine comes with a natural refrigerant and a smart software, and it can produce ice at least 30% cheaper than with diesel generators. And we applied this solar-powered ice machine in different projects. One is in milk cooling, where it is quite important to have an option to cool the evening milk of the cows, to be able to store them and sell them in the next morning together with the fresh morning milk. And another application was to cool and to preserve the day's catch of fishing harbors in small villages. Another application of a certain, of a type of a solar kiosk was developed during the pandemic, when we established in several African countries solar-powered molecular virology testing labs for COVID-19, for HIV, for malaria and tuberculosis and other diseases. And what is also very important when it comes to these solar kiosks now, that we have meaningful developments or innovations. For example, battery management systems, which can deploy now lead and lithium batteries at the same time, extending the lifetime of those batteries, reducing the operational costs. And if we combine this also with artificial intelligence, we can even predict maintenance and service rhythms of components which are connected to this grid or to this battery management system. I also would like to share with you some quite simple approaches which have been very effective in Bangladesh. It is just lightning, but by giving solar lightning applications in soap factories, in small handicraft industries, in shops, at poultry farms, we increased the productivity, and we had also very much longer production hours, which contributed to the livelihoods in these villages. And to conclude the example, I would like to go with you to Ethiopia and share the project of solar-powered processing of tomatoes. So tomatoes, as you know, are very easily perishable, and they need to be very ripe to have a nice taste. So, but if you process the tomatoes, they have several advantages, because then you can cool them, you can store them without cooling, and you add also a lot of value to them when you crush them, sterilize them, add herbs or spices. And one important factor which has to be added here, that in Ethiopia, nearly every household uses tomatoes for the daily food production. Food production in houses, which is also important in this case. So normally, or actually every day, the farmers aim, so the harvest of tomatoes in Ethiopia is 9 months a year, so the farmers aim at selling their tomatoes fresh at the markets, but sometimes prices are very low, or they have even an overproduction and cannot sell the products. So there comes this micro business in place, which is in the vicinity of the cultivation sites, and they can process 10 tons of tomatoes per year. And they do not only make use of electricity by PV systems, they use the sun in 2 different ways, because they are in an area located where you have radiation or direct sunlight nearly the whole year through. So they use solar cooking and solar drying, and being able in the end to come up with tomato paste, tomato juice, tomato sauce, dried tomato, and tomato powder. Just to give you a little bit of an insight what we've done in the development cooperation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. And you spoke about so many countries, Bangladesh, so many countries in the African nation or continent. I mean, and most of these applications were seen in the productive use category of renewable energy or distributed renewable energy. Now, I'm sure that you might have encountered a common challenge or a set of challenges that you may have seen across geographies or across projects. What is your take on that, and how has ZIZ been able to resolve those?
Yes. I mean, we encounter the same challenges as we have heard the whole day, also what you face in the private sector. So, and what we encountered in the rural electrification programs, that only by providing electricity, we do not necessarily see productive use happening, and also not necessarily the development of sustainable small businesses. So the challenges with which we see, or please let me put it a different way. We need prerequisites. We need preconditions that electricity in rural areas can really be supportive for sustainable development. One is not only knowledge and skills per se It's also knowledge and skills for small and micro businesses, for farmers and households, how they should make use of this electricity which is available now, and how they can funnel this into the development of businesses. And then in addition, we heard capacity building. It's technical capacity building, also to be able to maintain and run these technical implementations or technologies, but also the financial management and the access to financing, again, is one of the most crucial points here. But in addition, there's also an environment needed which is conducive from a policy and institutional perspective for the business development and the willingness to promote decentralized services. This also has to be there on an institutional level. Another point which was just mentioned, and it becomes very clear with this tomato example, is you need access to markets. What does it help to produce wonderful products in a village when you cannot sell them? So markets have to be created, and currently I'm working on a big waste project with GIZ, and here we see every day that the compost, the fermented organic manure which we produce from biogas facilities needs markets and needs a certain quality that this really can develop and that the business models are sustainable. And I want to add one more thing which has not been mentioned so far. There has to be a minimum of complementary infrastructure in these rural areas, such as transport has to be available, water supply, and also ICT services. That supports very much the socio-economic development. And what we do within GIZ, we focus directly on these preconditions and support these rural areas with water and wastewater infrastructure, with business development, with microcredits or financing solutions, and of course also with the implementation of productive use technologies.
Thank you so much. So access to market, access to supporting infrastructure, finance, and of course the need of capacity building. I take those 4 key takeaways from what you just elaborated. And let me now turn to Nitin. So Nitin, I think you have been working or closely following the Pradhan Mantri Suryodaya Yojana. So let me invite you to please share your thoughts on that.
Thank you, Vivek, and thank you everyone for listening to me. And thank you, Sambit, for inviting me for this event. So I'm sure since morning you must have looked at, heard, thought about the importance of distributed energy generation and how it is important for rural areas. I think the previous case studies that were presented in this session were very interesting and clearly highlighted, from my point of view, at least 2 aspects. One was the price that the users are willing to pay for electricity. I think the Desi Power presentation brought it out, 15 rupees per unit, if I'm not mistaken. Unheard of. I don't think anybody would imagine that, in rural areas you'll be able to get 15 rupees per unit. And this is not the first time that we're hearing it. I think there are a lot of case studies which actually talk about that and demonstrated that. The second is the economic impact of having power, reaching a rural area, which is what, Kunal actually, his presentation pointed out, the multiplier economic impact of that. And therefore, I remember when I started my career, my boss used to say that no power is more expensive than no power. And I think that continues to hold good because because of the impact that power has or energy has in our lives. So I think in that context, this whole Suraj, the PM Surya Ghar Muft Bijli Yojana becomes important, and we should look at it from that point of view. I think it was announced recently, this month itself. And I think it is important from 2-3 points of view. I think the first point is that it is setting a target. It is saying that we will enable 1 crore households to set up solar rooftop panel on their roofs. I think that is one clear differentiation, if I can say, compared to what we were talking about earlier. The second is the budgetary support, obviously, therefore, has also been increased. And in line with that, or the other way around, the subsidy that is being given, the support that is being given for these households to set up rooftop solar has increased from, I think, 20,000 as per the original MNRE program to about 30,000 per kilowatt, and overall with a ceiling of 70,000 rupees per 3 kilowatt. And of course, there are other conditions that are linked to it. So I think the intention is very clear, and I'm sure all of these case studies, all of these things that the policymakers are looking at to see the importance of energy reaching the rural households or rural areas, that is what is driving this. The other important driving factor in my view is that despite all the electrification that has happened over the last 5-6 years, very aggressive electrification, it is only the wires that have reached many places or most of the rural places. The supply of electricity is still not consistent. There are still huge and long blackouts which don't really help the consumers. Therefore, there is a need to have a more consistent and reliable power supply, which is equally important as the energy itself. So I think from that point of view, this whole PM Surya Ghar Yojana, it becomes very, very important. And I think I'm not going to elaborate on the points that have already been talked about. But the question now is, how will we reach that target of 1 crore households? Now, if you look at the scheme is basically 1 to 3 kilowatt, and even if you take 1.5 kilowatt as the average per household capacity, or maybe let's take only one, for 1 crore households, it's a huge capacity. I think it will be about 10 gigawatt, if I'm not mistaken. Now, that capacity to reach, do we have all the sufficient and necessary conditions in place? I think that's the key thing to really think about. I think there is a lot that needs to be done on that particular front. Simple example, if you take the rural household, again, something that was pointed out by the last speaker. The rural household, mostly they know, where to use the electricity for, in majority of the cases. But if you tell a rural household that you really need to set up a solar rooftop on your roof, and for that, you will have to negotiate with a solar panel vendor, with a battery supplier, with an inverter supplier, and all the paraphernalia that goes with it. He's going to be overwhelmed with that, and that's probably the basic problem that we see. So, dealing with utility, that's another issue, because in this particular scheme of things, nobody is driving it. It is the household owner that is supposed to drive setting up of that capacity, and I think that model has to change. We really need to look at people whose business it is to set up solar rooftop, and the beneficiary has to be the household owner. If you invert it that way, I think there will be a much larger uptake of this. As an example, you really need to get aggregators. Somebody who is interested in becoming an EPC contractor for solar rooftops at a smaller scale, at village level, but has the ambition to actually set up solar rooftops for 1,000 households, for 5,000 households, or 500 households. As an aggregator, he or she will be more interested in finding out the eligible houses, putting together the necessary, conditions that are needed, talking to the suppliers of all the, equipment, engaging with the utility, liaising with them, getting all the clearances, all of that. So I think that necessary element of putting the focus on the entity whose business it will be to set up the, rooftop, I think that is an element that really needs to be worked on, number one. The second is that if you look at the rural households, and this is even in urban areas, but the free electricity that households get. Now, if you are giving 200 units per month free to households, majority of the households in the rural areas don't consume more than 100 units. So in that case, there is no incentive for them to set up solar rooftop, right? Number one. In states like Punjab, there are 300 units being given free to residential customers. So how do you incentivize them? So therefore, the free electricity or the subsidized electricity, which reduces the value of rooftop solar, has to be reduced, has to be removed. The third is the utility has to see some value in it. Unless, because all of this is going to be useful, all of this is going to be implementable only if there is a support from the utility. Now, in the current circumstances, utility has no incentive to actually promote this because they are anyway being forced by the state governments to supply free electricity. They anyway don't get paid for it, and for them, they have no obligation to actually supply electricity to these people, right? So all of this put together, you see that while the household owner requires electricity, he has free electricity on paper but not receiving it. Utility has no incentive because it costs them more to supply to these households, and there is no guarantee that they will get paid because it is free or subsidized. So I think all these things really need to be put together. The households need to be made aware that their rooftop is an asset that they have, which must be used for generating solar, which will be beneficial to them at a cheaper cost, and as well as may allow them to sell additional electricity to the grid. So as I was mentioning, rural households will have a consumption of between 50 to 60 units per month. A 1 kilowatt panel will generate about 110 units per month. So they have additional 50 units that can be sold back into the grid and generate income for them. The utilities need to understand that this is something that can move them away from the subsidized and therefore loss-making utility supply business. And they must engage with the state governments to make sure that the subsidies are removed and they are actually made a partner, engaged partner in setting up these solar rooftop on these households. The third is the aggregator has to be established. The aggregator has to be promoted because the aggregator will have all the incentive to actually set up this whole ecosystem and make that benefit available to the household. So I think there are these elements that really need to come together if you really want a large-scale adoption of this. Otherwise, we'll keep talking about 10 gigawatt or 1 crore households, but we'll not see the implementation of it, like a lot of schemes that we see. But I think there is the right intention behind this scheme, and the numbers that we are seeing are quite encouraging. So we think, and I'm quite hopeful personally, that post-elections when the new system comes in, we will see these enablers being put in place for really large-scale adoption. Thank you.
So you stressed upon the role of aggregators, right? That's like putting in an intermediary into this value chain who is aggregating the demand and then sort of servicing that demand by creating projects on rooftops. Now, I want to just pick your brains on that aggregation model. Has there been any case wherein aggregation has worked in India when it comes to distributed renewable energy? Is there an example available?
I think the model, there is a difference in the way models have worked earlier, and I'm sure people who are in this business can throw light on it. But the earlier models were, as most of us will remember, were basically talking or trying to develop a local grid, right? And that was completely different from what we are talking about right now. Right now, what we are talking about is that most of the households will have connections, and we have seen this in the rural areas as well. So, because they already have they are connected to the grid, the situation is quite different here. You are actually setting up a generating unit on top of each household. So, I don't think there is a comparison. The models that we talked about earlier, where there was an aggregation of this demand, it was by aggregating demand at a, let's say, local village level and setting up a local grid, which is not the case here. So I think there is a difference. So if you want comparable example, I don't think there is any, but we have a lot of learning that have come from the local grid establishment.
Thank you so much. And one of the immediate models that come to my mind, which is not exactly a sort of an aggregation model, but Resham Sutra is working on aggregating the capacity of rural textile industry and then sort of supporting it through an ecosystem level solution. So with aggregation, there also comes a opportunity of securitization of that aggregated portfolio and then taking advantage of the capital markets that exist. But since you brought about a very interesting model, Kunal, and I just want to understand from you, how reliable are your machines, and how has been the response to your products in the rural ecosystem so far?
Yeah, thanks for that question, Vivek. So we realized that working in the rural environment, if our machines don't perform well, the whole village will know that before I come to know. Because people in the village are not very used to complaining to get their problem solved, but they are very good at spreading the news. So we have to, I would say, out of necessity, and also that's the reason why we exist. We need to give a good service to our customers. So that was a realization that actually, got us to firstly design the products in a way that it is for that particular environment. Sometimes we have to let go of better, more advanced electronics, for example, because we know that it's not going to be serviceable in the villages, and it has a higher chance of failure than what we can allow. And secondly, in developing a model within the village where it's a multi-tiered service model. Firstly, the person who's using the equipment has to be given a certain amount of training, a certain amount of understanding about how to maintain it on a regular basis. Secondly, there has to be somebody she can call, somebody who understands her language, somebody who's local and available any point of time, any time in the day. Because she is not going to call a number far away in Delhi or Ranchi if she has a service in a village. So there has to be somebody available locally, and this person should be willing to go, and there should be a model available where the person sees incentive enough in servicing the machine for this person. So I think that's a very key requirement for any solution that has to work well in the village, whether it is DRE or any model. It is, I think, very essential.
Let me turn to you, Aklavya, and replicability, scalability, and sustainability were three echoing themes that we heard about when it comes to propagation of distributed renewable energy solutions. So going beyond the initial pilot implementations that you do or the initial support that you provide, how do you ensure that the projects that you have supported are sustainable in the long run?
Yeah, I think, very pertaining question, because just doing a pilot is not a solution. We need a commercialization. It has to roll out. So what we believed, as other panelists also said, access to finance is very important. And some sorts of other mechanism in terms of subsidies, like now for rooftops, there are a large amount of subsidies are available. So can we also have some mechanism here for DRE, for particularly in the village context, so that it will reduce burden on capital repayment? And then other aspect is also quite important, to have a reliable RESCO partners, who can work in a number of villages, who have solid, management capability, knowledge base, and then do the capacity building at the village level, community level, where we have to develop entrepreneurs who will also take responsibility to run different types of enterprises. So I believe with all this combination, and yes, in the finance, when we say, then the patient capacity, investors also are very important. In our model, we are trying to showcase that even paying at a 16% ROE and the normal banking loan, this is what we are going to achieve. And as I said, the 15 rupees works out to be even costlier. We can't do much about that because this is what it is working out. But if we have this mechanism in place, then we'll be able to reduce the generation cost, and that will directly benefit it to end user. So I think this combination, if it can come into a place, it will have a real impact in the areas. Thank you.
So again, we circle back to that same point on access to finance, and I'll just invite each one of you for 1 minute each to say your last word on how to resolve this problem of access to finance. Maybe Nitin.
So I think in last session also my colleague had raised this question that access to finance actually has to be available with both the end user and with the service provider, because the entire responsibility of making sure that the model works well does not lie with one of the two. It's a joint responsibility. So in that way, I think a certain amount of risk and certain amount of repayment responsibility is needed to be taken by the end user, for which easy financing should be available for somebody who's not very bankable, who's not seen as very bankable right now with most financial institutions. And then the service provider also has to have enough incentive in the financing model so that they are willing to take that extra risk and go that extra mile, because they are doing something that is, off the beaten path. They are actually going out in the village or a remote location and doing some special services. So I think that needs to be incentivized through the financial model that comes.
I think it's important to get the scale for getting the financing, and I think therefore the business model that is being proposed, that becomes very, very important. And that's why even in the in the rooftop solar scheme, if you see, even though the subsidy is 30,000, right, which is say 60% of the overall cost of 1 kilowatt panel, who has that additional 20,000 to actually pay for it, right? Especially if you move away from the urban areas, it's a large amount. So who is getting that money on the table to set up that system is very, very important. And I think that really has to be thought through. If you try and put all of that burden on the user, it may not really work, and the scale then therefore will be limited. So I think you have to make sure that somebody who has the ability to put together large quantum of demand, aggregate that demand, and therefore benefit from economies of scale, should be able to look at finance. And obviously then you have to look at which is the most cost competitive financing that you can provide to them.
Thank you. Your last word on finance, access to finance.
Thank you. Yes. I think what is required are innovative financing solutions also to support closing the gap which is existing. Because, there is this gap fund available, and they made an investigation, and until 2030, about 95 trillion US dollars are needed for infrastructure, all kind of infrastructure in cities around the globe. So just let me share with you one approach which is very successful in our project, in the Waste Solutions for a Circular Economy. We have a risk-sharing facility. And this risk-sharing facility is a corpus which is with SIDBI, so a bank for small and medium-sized enterprises. And this gives a partial debt guarantee, 50%, to waste entrepreneurs who want to invest in waste infrastructure. And this seems to be enough as support that waste management infrastructure can happen here in India. And I think we might need more of these kind of approaches.
As we all know, there are several government schemes. It is operational in a village level on different type, when we talk about pumping, enterprises. But all of them are working in parallel. So even for one scheme, if you have to run to many places. So can we also have a mechanism, a single window clearance mechanism? Can we bring it to one place so that it becomes very easy to the end user to go and to know where to go? And so this is where, again, I'm emphasizing, they also should know where to go, how to approach. So in my view, that also becomes very important, because other panelists also talked about different sort of a mechanism, how financing can be made easy, but also policy and the schemes which is available. I think if there is some scheme to become as a single window clearance, that will be something very great.
So propagation of the schemes and policies to the last mile, innovative financing solutions, bringing the beneficiaries to the table, and also considering for access to finance, both for the beneficiary and for the intermediary. We heard all four of you. And with this, I'm closing the panel for now, but we are open to questions. Maybe 2-3 questions we can take. Please identify yourselves, and please identify the panelists you would want to ask question to.
Yeah, hello, my name is Karthik. Sorry. Again,
Yeah, please go, Karthik.
yeah, I prepare business models. So my question is first to Bettina and maybe the rest afterward, in that I think we have been speaking only about the rural context where DRE is concerned so far. But what about the urban context, and more specifically about waste mountains which are giving up so much methane emissions? So are there any models from elsewhere in the world where we have been able to capture the urban waste and produce the methane and whatever fertilizer, etc., locally? I mean, the DRE concept from an urban perspective.
When you would look towards Germany, there are different financial models in place, especially for waste. But this is the polluter pays principle. So it's actually the citizens and the industry which completely cover all the costs of the waste management which should happen, and in an environmentally friendly way. The only other country who is doing this is Austria. And then we don't have this polluter pay principle anymore in the world. So I would just say, as rich countries, it is okay, but it is not a solution which can be implemented so easy in other countries. And as I said before, we have to think about together how we can close the gap. We, especially in Germany, there was a company which is very successful in the market now, which provides financing solution to technology providers, that the buyers can pay a credit over 2 years. So there's more access to technology solutions. And of course, these are all larger scale applications which are applicable to cities then.
Gentlemen, yeah, please.
Yes, my question is to Mr. Sharan. My point is that, my question is that we are seeing that, as a biomass is concerned, it is not being, accepted as universally, because of infrastructure cost, because of capital cost that is involved with purchasing the equipment, etc. And the biofuel that are fused, for example, ethanol, which are there, basically require a lot of, have to be blended with the fossil fuels because it lacks density and that sort of efficiency to be used with as a fuel, indigenously. So what can be the, way about for that? And finally, even, in fact, lot of, landholders basically have very limited land in rural areas for agriculture, etc. So they have to, segregate it for this biomass, etc. So how can, because it requires a lot of, some kind of, land, so that, that the plant can be, can function. So what is the perception regarding it? So that it can be scaled, because ultimately for financiers, they will only finance when
can you limit to your question?
When they will finance only when there is some sort of viability as far as because we are seeing that only government support is coming in this area. Thanks very much.
When we talk about bioenergy or biomass or biogas, so before setting up any plant, it is also necessary to understand what is available, what type of agro-residues are available in the village. So when we talk about biomass, primarily, is agro-residue, different forms. And secondly, our approach is, we develop energy plantation along with the project, so that the, security of biomass is maintained. And we are aware that land issue is there, so we cannot, keep on. So it has to be a certain capacity. So that is why we always emphasize on hybrid. So how can you contain that? So.
We have room for one more question. Anyone? Yes, please.
Hi, sir. I'm Madhav from IIT Kanpur. I'm a PhD student. So a question is again from Aklavya, sir. Sir, the results you've shown, actually just wanted to know what's the size of the community we were having those results for, and what is the number of households probably, that's it, sir.
In particular case, what we have shown, we have not taken household electrification. But this village is quite a decent sized village. And as I have shown you, is 100 cows. And we have shown. So that means it's quite a number of farmers we are going to engage. So it's more than 100 farmers. So that means land side also will be more than 100 and 200 acres we will be targeting, where the amount of residue what we'll be getting, that will be used in these villages. But in case if electricity requirement comes from the community, we are willing to extend that. But why we have not considered? Because village has electricity, so duplication people may not like to do that. So, thank you.
Thank you so much, Aklavya, Bettina, Kunal and Nitin. I think it was a very enriching experience, especially for me. And with that, we close this panel, and thank you everyone for listening patiently. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen. Let's thank each of our speakers for sharing their thoughts, for sharing their experiences, their perspectives, their knowledge with all of us. And it is time for a group picture, and at the same time, I'll be inviting Shri Pradeep Jindal, advisor from PFI, to kindly please present tokens of appreciation for each of our speakers today. The session gave us an insight into the transformative impact of DRE on communities, highlighting how it provides clean energy while catalyzing local development initiatives. जोरदार तालियां सभी के लिए. Thank you very much for sharing your experiences, your perspectives with us. This will definitely leave us more informed than before. सभी speakers का बहुत-बहुत आभार. Thank you very much. So with this, ladies and gentlemen, we conclude our second technical session, and we'll now move into the third session. Thank you very much, speakers, for your time. Thank you very much for being here with us on this panel. Ladies and gentlemen, we will now be beginning with our next session, which is on uptake of DRE solutions for the